Hi guys, it's Dom here from Jojo Productions, and today we're going to be talking about the Canon's 7D. Now, I've done a few videos about the Canon 7D in the past, but they've all been mostly about the video features of this camera. But today I want to branch out and I want to talk about the photos from this old camera, because this thing still spits out some pretty good photos. So as many of you know, the Canon 7D came out in 2009 and it supports a 18 megapixel crop sensor, and it does 1080p video, and overall the images that come out of this camera are pretty good. A lot of people use this for professional work, whether it was for the photos, whether it was for the video. A lot of people really enjoyed using this camera for professional work. And I wanted to see if this old camera still holds up even, what is it now? Well, we're in 2025, so you do the math. What is it, like 15, 16 years later now? Yeah, so I did some photos with a couple friends of mine. We did a fashion shoot, and I've got to say that this camera did pretty well. Now, I want to talk about the lenses that I used, and you can see all three lenses right before me here. For the most part, I used the Canon 18-35. This is a kit lens. This is the newer version of it, and it originally came out with the Canon 80D, and those two paired really well together. So I slapped it on the 7D, and we used this for pretty much 90% of our photos. We used this. The second lens that we used was this guy. This is the Sigma 150 2.8 macro lens. It's a great lens for headshots, and if you really want to compress backgrounds and get really nice full body shots that really just stand out, this is a fantastic lens to use. So what I have here on the camera is actually a 50mm 1.8 lens. This is kind of everybody's first portrait lens, and this is definitely more than doable. Since we did a lot of on-location shooting, I want to talk about the lighting that we used. This really helped push this camera even a little further to get better images. For lighting, I did use the Godox 80-1200 Pro. I used a C-stand, and I used a giant 50-inch modifier, and I also used a lot of hard light as well. What was it like using the Canon 7D for more professional work? I would say this camera did really, really well. I really liked the ergonomics of the camera. It's a good, sturdy, chunky body. It feels good in the hands. We were out in the cold and the snow, and this camera didn't even skip a beat. It did a fantastic job. And I had no problems with it. The battery life did great. If I remember right, I think I had to switch the battery over on the second half, but I think the battery is already like half dead from the first battery that I was using. So I think this probably could have survived the whole entire shoot on one battery. Now let's talk a little bit more about the lenses. So the first lens that we used for most of our outdoor stuff was this Canon 18-35. I didn't necessarily have a nice wide angle lens that I would have liked to have used. So I said, hey, let's just use this guy. I think this should be good enough. And this is a great versatile zoom. It goes from wide to pretty decently telephoto at 135. So you can get some nice wide shots, and you can also kind of zoom in and get some good headshots if you need it. Now, the one downside about this lens is that it's a variable aperture zoom. So it's going to get darker and brighter when you zoom in and zoom out. That's not very great because I'm trying to control everything, and it's just an extra step, especially with the lighting. If I zoom in, it gets darker, then I have to bump up the lighting values, or if I zoom out, it gets too bright, and then I have to bring down the lighting values. So it's kind of a back and forth. But other than that, I would say this is a great versatile lens. I think it's pretty sharp. It looked pretty great when I brought the images onto the computer. We really, really liked them. So the 18-135 was not a bad choice, to be honest. And for the second lens, again, we used this big guy. This is the 150 macro lens. This is a fantastic lens for doing headshots because it's just really sharp, and the macro capabilities let you get in nice and close. So if you really just want to get some facial details, you can do that, or if you can step back, you can get really nice headshots. So basically, the choices are endless with a macro lens. Now, the one thing that does kind of suck about this is if you want to get more full body shots, you definitely got to stand back a little ways. When I was doing headshots, I would say I was about 10 or more feet away from the subject. And then you kind of start to lose that little bit of intimacy with your subject. You kind of have to start shouting a little bit more, which I don't like to do. Other than that, I would say this is a fantastic lens. Again, really versatile and insanely sharp when you start stopping it down. The next shoot that I'd like to talk about is a studio shoot that I did with the same model. And we did some more beauty fashion pageant kind of photos. For this shoot, we used the 50 because we were in a small studio space, and we were also doing more headshot style stuff. So 50 on a crop sensor equals about an 85 mil. And that was perfect for what we wanted to do when it comes to headshots. I would say that in the studio, this camera does great because I can push in as much light as I need to into the sensor. I'm not gonna lie, the images looked really, really good. It performed really, really well. Dynamic range looked fine, but again, I didn't really have to lift any shadows or pull down any highlights because I could completely control all of the lighting in the studio. For lighting, we did use again the Godox 80-1200 Pro as my key light, and then we used a couple of other studio strobes as kind of the background light and the hair light. So the images look fantastic, as you can see, and we were both really, really happy with these photos. So let's talk about the 18 megapixels. I know that compared to most cameras today, 18 megapixels, it is a little low, but to be honest, I didn't really notice a difference. I mean, compared to my 5 DSR, yeah, there's a big difference, especially when I zoom in and I want to get really good detail of the skin, or if I want to retouch, it's a little easier with 50 megapixels compared to 18, but the 7D did more than just fine for what we needed to do. 18 megapixels, it's more than enough for printing. We were just doing portfolio work for her, so most of these are just going to be digitals. She's probably going to print a few of them, and I'm not worried about it because, you know, we were using a pretty decent lens. I was using good fast exposures, low ISOs. So again, I'm not really worried about it. So do I think the Canon 7D is worth it? I would say yes. You put some good lenses in front of it, you get some good lighting on your subject, and I think you can do a pretty darn good job. I really was surprised from this camera, especially compared to my 5D, that the image quality actually held up really, really well. I think this is just kind of a point in, don't worry too much about the camera, just get good lenses on it and get some good lighting on your subject, and I think you should be able to make some really good images. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you loved it, subscribe. If you have any questions or comments about the Canon 7D, please leave those in the comment section below. I will be sure to get to those, and I will see you guys in the next video.